Here's how to test Facebook ads in 2024. Here's my testing method. This is more of a part one series that I want to show you. There'll be more series coming up. This is great for any e-com brands out there, marketers in e-commerce, wanting to test creative methodically, effectively, and efficiently. Um, and this is more of a creative framework that info product or can work for lead gen as well. So this is more of a framework rather than a tactic. My story, um, I've lived as a digital nomad in Bali, Thailand, Chiang Mai, you call it, freelancing for clients. And after that, I worked for a few agencies in Australia. And now I have worked as a head of growth for a D2C brand in Australia. Um, and I've grown that brand to several multi-million dollar business. And in this channel, I just want to share any marketing lessons, ups and downs that I had, um, that I've gathered in the past 4 to 5 years with you, and I wish I would have known. In this video, what's covered is these 5 things. Number one, fundamentals over tactics. Number two, how to structure creative tests. Number three, example of a bad creative testing. Number four, example of a good creative testing. And number five, what do I do next after my round one of testing? So the reason I'll go over, I like to focus on fundamentals rather than tactics is because tactics will probably give you a short-term boost for a while, but you have to come back again and try another tactic. And that can be very, very tiring as a media buyer, especially if you're working at an agency account. If you're managing four to 10 accounts, and that's a lot of brain uh, power that you need. So fundamentals, what I like to focus is on marketing fundamentals, deep customer research, be data driven, and focus on logic rather than emotions. Um, Especially if you're a brand owner, you can get really tied up in the ads manager. But again, try to be more logical in your decision making process. Facebook has ups and downs, very volatile sometimes, or can be on an everyday basis. Uh, but take your emotions out and try to get the right data set in the right way and make the right decisions. And uh, tactics such as some people launch $35 ABOs, twinkle around attribution windows, spray and pray creatives. They test a GIF, they test a static video with no purpose behind it. They have tactics like going for automatic placements versus in-feed only. Yes, there are some cases where you play around with the attribution windows, or once you have a good data set and know that instead of going automatic placements, it's best to go, let's say, in feed rather than story based format creative. That's You can play around with that later. Um, it only comes after you have mastered the fundamentals, and I probably recommend you know trying these tactics you know after you're at 3K, 5K in daily spend, because at $100 daily spend, there's no point of trying these tactics. This is how you could structure your creative test, and this is personally how I do it. I have three campaigns. Um, so one is a creative testing campaign, as you can see, set it as ABO. Um, Second one is Advantage Plus scaling at a CBO, scaling at a CBO. Again, there's people that might test a dynamic creative, um, they might do dynamic creative testing on the creative testing level. But this is, again, it's fundamentals over tactics. If you have a creative that resonates with the buyer or potential buyer, it will work. It's not a matter of how you structure a campaign. Um, The reason I go with creative testing ABO is I want to isolate the spend. I want to isolate the creative variables and messaging. I want each ad set to get enough impressions, enough data set for me to graduate them into a scaling campaign here. Um, if you go with CBO, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but Facebook will allocate a uneven spend, right? And for me, at the creative level, I just want to test every single variable as possible. And once verified, I move them into Advantage Plus and scaling and see how they react with a higher budget. So this is inside the creative APO. So I would create, for example, let's say I am advertising for a supplement company. I would create 4 ad sets as a batch. I call that as batch one. They go live at the same time. They end the test at roughly the same time. So the environment is pretty much similar. Uh, because, for example, if you launch this ad on Monday and this black image ad 2 weeks later, but you have a Black Friday sale, again, that image performance will be very different because it's in a separate environment. So you want to test a batch of creatives in the same environment at the same time at a similar budget, actually at the same budget, so you get the same pacing of spend um, to get statistically significant data. Um, for example, what I do is angle one will contain one angle only, but with a different set of creatives. For example, TBA1, that's my naming convention. Um, angle one, batch one, targeting Australia, top of funnel, broad, broad targeting, optimizing purchase, automatic placement. Uh, I would have a vegan protein copy around vegan protein, that this is a vegan protein. Um, have the same creative here and the same for this one. But the clear differentiation is I have creative A, creative B, and creative C. And I will do the same for angle 2, 3, and 4. Have the same creatives, but angle 2, I will talk about the cost effectiveness uh, of the product, but have the same creative. Because at the ad level, I want to know which creative is performing, but on the ad set level, I want to see what kind of messaging is resonating. So what makes a bad creative test is number one, creative angles do not come from proper research. A common mistake I see with junior media buyers, marketers, is because I think so. It when I ask, well, how did you come up with the creative concept? I don't mean to like be to offend them, but I just want to know their process, how they came about that creative concept. Usually they come up with because I think so, because I heard. That's not a very good research. You need to have um, a data set that you can show that this creative angle is based on 500 reviews, for example, and they all mention about how uh, people have been buying because it's a vegan protein. That's an angle that you should run rather than a personal bias that you have. Number two is the ads do not get enough spent. Uh, you can either do this in 2 ways. Impressions, for example, you run an ad, let it run for 1,000 impressions, um, and make the decision, or you let a ad run for 1 to 1.5 target CPA. If it gets a, if it gets a sale or no sale, that's how you make the decision. I'll explain that in the next slide. Um, but most importantly, you need to give enough spend so you can make the right decisions. Uh, getting a sale, getting 2 sales within $5, um, and that's not statistically significant. You need to give enough spend for you to justify this is worth graduating into a scaling campaign. Um, number three is a lot of common mistake people make is when they launch a creative, they forget to write down what they are testing, what they are hoping to get from this test. They just spray and pray and think about that later. I would highly advise junior marketers to um, have an Excel spreadsheet, write down what you're testing, what you what you want to gain out of it, and what your success KPIs are. Now, I want to show you what makes a good creative test. So here are the key points. Number one, you have a clear thesis. You go to the ads manager and you launch, and you have, let's say, two different angles. One is vegan protein angle. Number two is cost saving. You want to know, are people more inclined towards more economical side of the protein, or is it more of a dietary requirement? Right? You want to have a clear thesis around your testing. Number two is very similar to the previous slide, but angle and messaging inspirations come from research. It's about talking to customers. It's calling them on the phone, scraping reviews, going to Amazon, go to your best ads and see what people are talking about in the ad, right? And find common points. And I'll actually highly recommend you to just use what they're saying as an angle because that's what customers are going through in the customer journey. And it's very likely if one or two people are talking about the same exact phrase, 100 and 200 people are talking about that in their own mind. And you want to address that. And uh, a good creative allows each asset, each ad creative to get enough spend to make a right decision. For example, a common mistake I see is people will see a creative with a high CTR but has $5 spent, and that let's say that has a 4% CTR compared to an ad that has spent $50, 1% CTR, got enough sales. So you need to know your success KPI and get enough spend for you to graduate them into scaling campaign. Okay, now, so what do I do with my initial test? So the one I talked about before, I call it round one rapid fire testing. For example, I'll give you a scenario here. A target CPA cost per acquisition is $50, and asset one spent 300. Asset two, as you can see, they spent the same amount of spend. Uh, but you can see asset four is in the green zone because the CPA is 30. It's below that $50 CPA. So I would mark this and write it down in a spreadsheet and know why the angle has worked compared to angle 1, 2, 3. So what I would do now is go back to my creative designer, creative team, take this data set. For example, let's say this is the winning angle, winning creative concept. I would turn that in the round two of testing, I would turn this into a GIF. I will turn this into a video. I will change this up. It's the same angle. It's more of the economic benefits of the creative, the supplement, but I would test it in an us first thing. For example, on the left-hand side, it will be a competitor. It might be €5 per meal, whereas Huel will be 2.21 euros. And you will run this again in the same setup and call it round two and see which type of creative asset, GIF, video, static, performs the best in this type of messaging and scale it from there. So this is more of a overarching view of how I test um, creatives. If you like this video and let me know if you have any questions below. And I'll be probably uploading part 2 and part 3 of these videos.